In the Heart of the Sea in 3D, a Ron Howard movie. Now, Ron Howard has made some great movies, and by appearances, this looked like it could be Apollo 13 at sea. It never quite reaches the emotional impact of Apollo 13, but I feel the worst that can be said about this is it's not bad. If it wasn't made by Ron Howard and did not have a star cast, if it did not carry the weight of expectations, I feel it might have received higher praise. Now, look here. The 3D here is always seems to be focusing on something close up and then shows some action in the distance. It does this throughout the movie, and it's terrific. But the 3D manages to be spectacular without being showy. Look here. Now, the harbor is dark, but they have this light going around, and they just kind of give everything a quick flash that immediately showcases its stereo footprint. And when this mystery light goes away, the eye remembers that footprint. So, although it was a dark night shot, that moment of brightness was just enough to bring it all to life. Now, the boats make for so much 3D eye candy to look at. They're really messy things with their ropes, which I guess you call tackle, and their sails. There's so much detail to look at. And one of the problems with oceans is, although the ocean plane does immediately look good in 3D, it's kind of can be like looking at the sky with planes where you don't have a lot to compare the space to, so the ocean can get pretty old. Fortunately, most of this movie really focuses in on close-ups, really, on details on the boats. So you always have a rope in your face or hands or something really close up to look at. Most of the time when it stretches out to the ocean, there's a storm going on, there's some action to look at, and it generally stays pretty tight on the boat, which is good. Because that's where all the interesting things are. Now, the ocean stretching into infinity really helps bring home the desperation of being in trouble out at sea. But it doesn't stay there for long enough to get old. It's a really good balance of ocean versus boat shots here. There are posters for the movie showing this whale's tail that goes into the sky, and you kind of get a shot like that several times, and they're always impressive with the water falling off the tail and it hanging up in the air like a big hammer waiting to come down. There's a great scene showing the onboard processing of a whale. The stereo works very well, showing the unlucky sailor who has to crawl inside to scoop up the last bit of natural oil. Most shows that deal with any kind of hunting usually just focus on the kill, seeing it as step one of a very labor-intensive process is so often ignored, and I noticed how it also worked to explain a problem with fire later on in the movie, which that was a fast-moving scene where the presence of fire would have otherwise seemed like a convenient trope to, if we had not earlier been informed of its purpose. This is a well-crafted movie. The attention to detail gave this almost more of a documentary feel rather than a drama, which is both a compliment and a complaint. I have watched this a couple of times, and each time I felt myself that I was wanting something that just wasn't there. And I was wondering what that was. One idea was that this was a monster movie without a monster. They didn't seem to have any particular fear of the whale. There was a broken up captain who warned them about it, and they just had no superstition. When they encountered it, it was all treated very professionally, very matter of factly, and any bad luck was treated as just that. And the whale could have been a rock or an iceberg. It wasn't an enemy, it was just something to be dealt with. And so it wasn't a ghost story. And, well, how about human wits and intrigue, like in Master and Commander? But it wasn't really that, too. Although there was some personality clashes, there was no chess. They never made any moves to undermine each other. That was never a story. And even in survival mode, there's some disgust at what must be done, but it's done. Everyone is a good professional sailor, no matter what the bitter end may bring. no pushback to authority, which is probably the best way for a crew to get through this and salvage the most out of a bad spot, but it's not very cinematic. I suspect that the key to this movie was that it hoped you would see the scarred up whale as a person whose home was attacked and gave the invaders a good spanking for their efforts. I felt it wanted to equate the whale's heart with the audience's. Don't think this movie cares much at all for the people involved. And perhaps the entire cast is just meant as a collective antagonist against the whale, which would explain the relatively unchallenged decision making. They largely operate as a unit, which is unfortunate. I just don't relate to whales. I relate to people.